Hey, welcome to the Game or Die channel. My name is Ryan Moore, and today we're going to be talking about and reviewing Sniper Elite Resistance. Now, I've been a big fan of the Sniper Elite games. I've played every single one of them, starting with the first one and then moving all the way on to this sixth game in the series, which is titled Sniper Elite Resistance. Now, because I am a big fan of this, I do let a lot of little minor things slide, and I think that's totally fine. If you're a fan of a franchise, you can let minor stuff slide, but I always do call them out. As I played through this game, and if you watch the streams, you'll hear me say it multiple times, one of my favorite things about the game is the gameplay itself. Sniping Nazis is just good old-fashioned fun, whether it's blowing their brains out from 600 yards away or meters away to even the testicle shots. They're satisfying yet cringy, right? So when I play this game, I have a fantastic time. It's one of those fallback games where I can jump into it for 15-20 minutes or several hours at a time and just have a blast, smiling from ear to ear the entire time I'm playing it. And that's the case with Sniper Elite Resistance. Kind of a weird name, right? I don't know why they dropped the number 6 there, but they did, and I don't think it's an issue at all. It just kind of would be nice to just continue on with the numbering scheme. I wonder if they're going to title Sniper Elite this next game in the series, whatever they're going to call it. I wonder if they're going to use the number 6. So this might be an offshoot. The reason why it might be an offshoot is because instead of Carl, the German English, American that you play as throughout the entire series, you take control of a new protagonist named Henry Hawk, who is an Englishman, and he sounds like Jason Statham. All right, I'll rip your bloody head off, I will. And man, I could not care less about this character. It was actually kind of frustrating and infuriating every time he opened his mouth. And boy, oh boy, does he have a lot to say about every gun he picks up, every enemy he takes care of or snipes, and it just got really grating. You can kind of think about it like the verbosity meter on Bubsy, where Bubsy the Bobcat would just spout off random things all the time, like in those old mascot platformers. Henry does the same thing here, and it kind of got on my nerves a little bit. Is that a deal breaker? Absolutely not. The deal breaker becomes the issue when I personally value story in games. I love story in games. It's my driving factor. For a good game, I think you need a good balance. A little bit heavier story for more narrative experiences, a little bit more gameplay if you're wanting more of a platformer or something like that, but a good balance. Unfortunately, with Sniper Elite Resistance, there is not a good balance, and the storyline is basically cribbed and copied from the other games in the series. Again, I've called this out so many times before in my old reviews, or even the playthrough as we stream this game. The story just is this exact same thing. You are a character, this time Henry Hawk, and you are fighting the Nazis, trying to take down whatever new super weapon they have. And honestly, this is probably the most egregious one in the entire series. I could not tell you what super weapon they were going for. It had some fun name to say, kind of, but I couldn't tell you a week later after playing it. And you are part of a resistance instead of this global, English or American military unit. You're kind of off on your own with this ragtag of group of bandits and resistance that is led by a French chick who I couldn't tell you her name, and they show up at the very beginning of the game and the very end of the game, and they have zero weight on the entire gameplay experience. She does narrate pretty much every single cutscene, and boy, are the cutscenes some of the worst I've seen in the last decade of gaming. This is just literally photos being thrown on a table and narration over them. And like I said, I love story. I'm totally cool and down with World War II history. That's one of my favorite, hobbies is World War II history. But when they start speaking and narrating over these video game pictures, in-game pictures, you can't see anything, you have no idea what you're looking at, and it makes really no impact on me, the player, at all. I couldn't tell you why I was doing the things that I was doing, or where I went in the world, or what levels there were. I could describe them, but I couldn't tell you what the names of the levels were, the characters that I played as, or played for, or even shot at and was battling against. Nothing about names, characters, story, location, anything made an impact on me at all. And that's honestly the biggest detriment. Now, it might seem like I'm down on the game, and I'm not, because I loved this game. I loved playing this game. This is a gameplay first type of game. And honestly, I don't have a problem with that. I think gaming is such a big, broad industry now that we can have extremely tight narrative gameplay and extremely broad narrative gameplay where the story doesn't really matter. And I know a lot of people are actually like that. They like very little story in their games. They'll smash through cutscenes. I don't do that. I like the story. Even if it's terrible, I will try to enjoy the story. But here, it doesn't really matter. You can just play this game as a, standalone level and get the same exact information and fun out of the gameplay. Now, let's talk about the gameplay really quick. The gameplay is, again, the same. You have a very large open world to explore, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots of enemies. There's basically only enemies. There are no friendships in this game. Technically, there's like one level where you do meet a tiny two-group resistance, but it's so inconsequential out of the several hours, I think 9-10 hour gameplay, that I could barely remember them. They were maybe 2 minutes out of the entire game. But every enemy in this game matters. Why? Because they deal a lot of damage. You can crank up the difficulty, and the difficulty does make a big difference as well. For the first several levels of the game, I think the first 2 or 3 levels, I played as just normal. And I was able to pick off pretty much everyone in the level by sniping them, sneak up behind them, and melee kill them. And it wasn't an issue. It was fairly easy for the most part. I did get into some firefights. I did get into some points where I had to run away, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But when a viewer, Danzig, basically told me, hey, crank up the difficulty, I went, all right, cool, let's do that. And boy, did it make a big difference. Now I had to really make sure that I was in cover, make sure that I wasn't seen, really be careful of my shots and masking the sound of my sniper rifle. And honestly, it makes a big difference, but it also amps up the enjoyment of the game as well. When I'm sitting there in a sniper tower, covered, and I'm waiting for a biplane to fly by so it masks the sound of my shot so the enemies can't tell where I am, that makes a really big difference in the enjoyment of my gameplay. And so I would highly encourage someone, if you're breezing through the first levels, crank up the difficulty a little bit. And this is something that I love about this game and most games now in modern gaming, which we can talk about a different time, but allowing the player to change specific options where this is a little bit more difficult than this. The AI is a little bit more aware of your character versus the options that you have. Like the options are just incredible in this game. So basically tailoring your difficulty to your playstyle is actually really cool. I just opted for the basic crank up the difficulty from medium to hard, right? And that made a big difference, and I really enjoyed it. Now let's talk about the game itself. You play as Henry Hawk, and you are, just going through all these levels trying to defeat the Nazis. And the sniping is so much fun. Like I said, the X-ray shots are like a staple of this game at this point. This is why you play the game. And there were definitely several times where I would spend a couple hours, 1 to 2 hours in a single level, sniping as many people as I could. And every single time their heads exploded or their eyes popped out of their skull, or like I said, I got a heart shot or a lung shot or an intestine shot, or like I said, it's cringy, the testicle shot. Ooh, man. Seeing their body parts explode and pop and even deflate in some cases were just joyous experiences. When Henry walked up and stabbed some dude, melee kill, in the back of the head with his knife, and their brain starts flowing and deflating, oh my gosh, I could not laugh hard enough. It was just such a funny thing to see. And every game or every shot is that joyous. It's so much fun to watch the slow motion of that bullet flying all the way several hundred meters across the level to just pop someone's eye out. It's just great. It's so much fun. And that's really what I loved about this game. The methodical nature of it, kind of, sneaking around, like maybe a little bit Metal Gear Solid in some cases, where you're waiting for a group of people to have a conversation and then walk away so that you could pick them off one by one, waiting for a plane overhead, or even sabotaging enemy equipment like a generator or a car, to make some sort of backfire sound so that it masks the sound of your sniper gun or even your regular guns. There are definitely a lot of weapons strewn about throughout the entire game, and I love that. There's a whole workbench where you can actually customize your weapons, and I spent way more time than I needed to in that, and I didn't even spend all that much time. Why? Because the sniper rifle is there. That's your main gun, and that's what you want to be using. And like I said, the sniping is probably the funnest part of the game. And there was a few levels where I would walk maybe 15, 20 feet and then get to like a lookout area. And I would spend that first lookout area 20, 30 minutes in that level, just sniping as many characters as I could, using my binoculars to tag as many enemies as I could, then pull out the gun, the sniper rifle, and then snipe them every single time. And again, with that slow motion and that X-ray and the organs deflating and moving and pulsing and blowing up and popping, oh my gosh, it was satisfying every single time. And this is why I love this series. So if you want a game that has a little less, or maybe a little bit of a light story mode, or maybe if you don't care about story at all, this is an awesome game if you like gameplay. If you want a story, like, this is just not the game for you, man. I wish it was. I really liked the first couple, but they kept just copy and pasting the story. And now, again, the character, even though you play as a different one, is less interesting than the cardboard slate of Carl, the German American. Man, I don't even know how they did it, but they did it. So I would highly recommend it if you like gameplay, if you like World War II scenarios and settings, if you like just straight up killing Nazis, this is a great game to play. If you want some sort of deep, meaningful character development, if you want to see some budding romance between a French resistance agent and a Englishman, you ain't getting it here, man. And it's a bummer for, like I said, the fact that I love story in my games. It's one of my driving factors, but it is not the only driving factor. I can set aside the story issues. I can set aside the minor little gameplay issues, the bugs, the, clipping through or having just enemies hear me when I think they shouldn't have. I definitely did have a couple of levels where enemies were shooting me through the wall, and I do believe that got updated and patched out within the first couple of days of gameplay. It didn't happen after I think it was the third level that it happened to out of 9, and all the other levels that never happened. But that first level, and I think the second day of release, that definitely happened. But they did go through some updates and patches, and that's why I never really talk about that too much, is minor little inconveniences, minor non-game breaking issues. don't faze me all that much. I have too many games to play to really care about minor little things. But if that does bug you, I'd say, maybe wait on it. But what the beautiful thing about this game is, if you have Game Pass, whether it's on Xbox or PC, it's on both. So if you have Game Pass, which is like modern day Blockbuster, spend $20 and rent an entire library of games for 30 days. It's a pretty great deal, right? You get this for basically free. So that's what I did. I played it on PC via PC Game Pass, and man, I had a blast playing through it. All 9 levels, each level taking over an hour roughly. I think there was a couple times where I got up to 1 hour and 45 minutes, maybe almost 2 hours. And like I said, I had a blast. So I would highly recommend playing Sniper Elite Resistance if you like it, but if not, there's always more games around the corner. That's going to do it for me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you in the next review.